The council chamber on Viridian Prime was filled with voices, all speaking at once. Representatives from 40 different species sat in their assigned seats, arguing about the war that was slowly destroying everything they had built. The Crithian Empire had taken another star system last week. 3 colonies were gone. Millions of lives were lost. Commander Zek of the Talion Collective stood at the center platform, his blue skin appearing pale under the harsh lights. He held up a datapad showing the latest casualty reports. The numbers were terrible. His people had lost half their fleet trying to defend the Orion sector. It had not been enough. "We cannot continue like this," Zek said, his voice breaking. "The Crithians are too strong. They have more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. Every battle we fight, we lose more than we can replace." An Arxilian diplomat named Vesh, old and bent with age, slowly rose from his seat. His people were known for keeping records, for remembering history that others had forgotten. The chamber grew quiet as he spoke. "There may be another way," Vesh said softly. "In the Forbidden Archives, there are stories. Ancient stories about a species that once existed in this galaxy. They were called humans." Several council members made dismissive sounds. One of them, a Korthan warrior named Drax, laughed outright. "Fairy tales," Drax said. "Stories we tell children to make them brave. The humans are not real, Vesh. They never were." But Vesh shook his head. "I have seen the records. Fragments of data from 3,000 years ago. The humans existed. They had colonies in the Outer Rim. They were different from us. The records say they fought in ways we could not understand. They protected the weak. They never surrendered, even when they should have." "And where are they now?" another council member asked. "If they were so powerful, why did they disappear?" Vesh sat down slowly. "That, I do not know. The records end suddenly. There was some kind of catastrophe. After that, nothing. Just silence." The council continued their debate, but most dismissed Vesh's words as the ramblings of an old scholar desperate for hope. They returned to their endless arguments about fleet positions and defensive strategies. None of them believed that ancient legends would save them now. Far across the galaxy, in a small yellow star system that the council had forgotten existed, Commander Jake Morris stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance. He was a tall man with short dark hair and tired eyes. He had been awake for 20 hours straight, overseeing the final tests of the ship's new drive system. "All systems are green, Commander," said Lieutenant Ben Carter from the navigation station. Ben was younger than Jake, eager and always smiling. "The drive is stable. We are ready." Jake looked at the view screen showing the planet Earth below them. Home. Humanity had been trapped in this single star system for 3,000 years, ever since the Great Collapse. Their ancestors had tried to reach the stars, had built colony ships, and sent them out into the darkness. But something had gone wrong. The ships had been destroyed. The technology had been lost. Earth had been alone. But that was about to change. Captain Lisa Grant entered the bridge, her uniform crisp and perfect. She commanded the entire expeditionary fleet, 3 ships designed to explore beyond their solar system and find out if humanity was truly alone. "The Marathon and the Ranger are ready," Lisa said. "Admiral Kevin Hayes has given us final authorization. We launch in 1 hour." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was it. After 3,000 years, humanity was going back to the stars. 1 hour later, the 3 ships activated their new faster-than-light drives. The engines hummed with power, bending space around them. On Earth, billions of people watched on their screens as the ships vanished in a flash of light. They were finally free. The journey to the nearest star cluster took 3 days. The ships traveled through a dimension that human scientists barely understood. When they emerged, they found themselves in empty space between stars. "Running scans," said Lieutenant Nicole Davis from the science station. She was good at her job, careful and precise. Detecting multiple energy signatures. Some of them are very strong. What kind of energy? Lisa asked. Nicole frowned at her screen. Weapons fire, Captain. A lot of it. There is a battle happening in the Talion system, about 2 light years from our position. Jake and Lisa exchanged looks. A battle meant other species. It meant they were not alone. But it also meant war. Set course for the Talion system, Lisa ordered. But keep us at a safe distance. I want to see what we are dealing with before we make contact. The 3 human ships moved quietly toward the battle. As they got closer, their sensors picked up more details. Dozens of ships were fighting. Some were large and powerful, their weapons tearing through the smaller vessels with ease. The smaller ships were trying to run, but they were being hunted down one by one. The larger ships are attacking the smaller ones, Nicole reported. The smaller vessels appear to be civilian transports. They are not even fighting back. They are just trying to escape. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He watched on the screen as a transport ship exploded, its debris scattering into space. How many people had been on that ship? Hundreds? Thousands? Captain, Jake said quietly. We need to help them. Lisa was silent for a long moment. She understood what Jake was feeling, but she also understood the risk. These 3 ships represented everything humanity had. If they were destroyed, Earth would be alone again for decades. We have no idea who those ships belong to, Lisa said. We do not know the politics of this situation. For all we know, this could be a legitimate military action. Does it look legitimate to you? Jake asked, pointing at the screen where another civilian ship was breaking apart under weapons fire. Lisa closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her decision was made. All ships, battle stations, she commanded. We are going in. Broadcast on all frequencies. This is the United Nations Ship Defiance. Cease fire immediately, or we will be forced to intervene. The bridge crew moved quickly, preparing weapons and shields. Ben plotted an intercept course. Nicole tried to establish communication channels. As the human ships accelerated toward the battle, Jake felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose. For 3,000 years, humanity had been hiding, alone, and afraid. But they were not that species anymore. They were explorers. They were warriors. They were protectors. The ancient galaxy was about to remember what that meant. On Viridian Prime, in the depths of the Forbidden Archives, Vesh sat alone reading the old records. He did not know that across the stars, the legends he spoke of were becoming real again. He did not know that the humans were back, but he would learn soon enough. They all would. The 3 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talion system. What they saw made every person, on every bridge, fall silent. The battle was worse than their sensors had shown. Massive warships, dark and angular like predators, circled around a cluster of smaller vessels. The smaller ships were clearly civilian, their hulls marked with symbols that looked like trade company logos. Some were already destroyed, floating debris fields where ships used to be. Others were damaged and drifting, their engines dead. Count 20 enemy warships, Lieutenant Ben Carter reported from his station. They are 3 times larger than our vessels. Their weapons are tearing through those transports, like paper. Commander Jake Morris watched the tactical display. The enemy ships moved in coordinated patterns, professional and efficient. This was not random violence. This was systematic destruction. Any response to our broadcast? Captain Lisa Grant asked. Nicole Davis shook her head. Nothing, Captain. Either they cannot understand our language, or they are ignoring us. One of the enemy warships turned toward a damaged transport that was trying to limp away. Jake could see small escape pods launching from the transport, families trying to survive. The enemy ship charged its weapons. They are going to fire on the escape pods, Jake said, his voice tight. Lisa's jaw clenched. All ships, engage. Target that warship. Fire everything we have. The UNS Defiance, Marathon, and Ranger opened fire simultaneously. Human missiles streaked across space, followed by directed energy beams. The weapons hit the enemy warship's shields, causing them to flare bright blue. The enemy ship stopped charging its weapons and turned to face this new threat. On the bridge of the Crithian command ship, General Throck stared at his tactical display with confusion. 3 unknown vessels had just attacked his fleet. The ship designs were not in any database. The weapons technology was primitive but surprisingly effective. "What are these ships?" Throck demanded. His sensor officer studied the readings. "Unknown, General. They are broadcasting in a language we do not recognize. Their hull composition is unusual. High amounts of titanium and carbon composite. Their tactics are aggressive." Throck smiled. Aggressive was good. Aggressive meant predictable. Destroy them. Show these fools what happens when they interfere with the Crithian Empire. 5 Crithian warships broke formation and moved to engage the human fleet. They were each 3 times larger than the human vessels. Their commanders expected an easy victory. They were wrong. Jake watched the enemy ships approaching. Ben, execute pattern Delta. Nicole, reroute power from secondary systems to forward shields. All weapons. Target the lead ship's engine section. The Defiance suddenly accelerated. Not away from the enemy, but directly toward them. The Crithian ships fired their main weapons, expecting the human ship to dodge. But the Defiance did not dodge. Instead, it rolled sideways at the last second, letting the enemy fire pass harmlessly by, then fired its own weapons at point-blank range into the exposed engine compartment of the nearest Crithian ship. The Crithian ship shuddered as explosions rippled across its stern. Its engines went dark. "One down," Jake said. "Marathon, your turn." The Marathon, commanded by Captain Greg Murphy, dove under the Crithian formation. It released a spread of missiles that curved upward, hitting 3 different enemy ships from below where their shields were weakest. The Crithians tried to adjust, but the human ships were too fast, too unpredictable. Lieutenant Ben Carter piloted his fighter craft away from the Defiance, leading a wing of 6 smaller ships. They were tiny compared to the massive Crithian warships. Easy to overlook. That was the point. Ben saw a Crithian cruiser lining up a shot on one of the civilian transports. He pushed his fighter to maximum speed, weaving between debris fields. His targeting computer locked onto the cruiser's sensor array. "This is going to hurt," Ben muttered to himself. He fired everything he had, then pushed his fighter into a spin that should have torn it apart. The Crithian cruiser fired at him, but missed. Ben's weapons did not miss. The sensor array exploded, blinding the cruiser. The Crithian ship fired wildly, unable to see what it was shooting at. Ben's fighter took a glancing hit. Alarm screamed in his cockpit. His shields were gone. His engine was damaged. He was going to die. But the civilian transport was getting away. Ben smiled, even as his fighter began to break apart around him. Then the Defiance was there, its weapons destroying the Crithian cruiser. A tractor beam locked onto Ben's dying fighter and pulled it to safety. "Nice flying, Ben," Jake's voice came through the radio. "But next time, try not to use yourself as bait." "No promises, Commander," Ben replied, relief flooding through him. The battle continued for another 20 minutes. The human ships fought in ways the Crithians had never seen. They did not stay at safe distances, exchanging fire. They got close, dangerously close, targeting specific systems with surgical precision. They protected the civilian ships, even when it meant putting themselves in danger. Sergeant Amy Collins, leading a damage control team inside the Defiance, worked frantically to repair hull breaches as enemy fire punched through their shields. She and her team wore armored suits and carried welding equipment, sealing holes while the ship was still fighting. "Hull breach on deck 7, Amy shouted into her radio. "We need foam sealant here now." A massive explosion rocked the ship. Amy was thrown against a wall. Her shoulder felt like it was on fire, but she got up and kept working. Around her, her team did the same. There was no time to stop, no time to feel pain. People were counting on them. On the bridge, Lisa watched as another Krithian ship went dark. The enemy fleet had lost 4 ships. 3 more were damaged. The remaining Krithian vessels began to pull back. General Throck stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet was retreating. His fleet, the pride of the Krithian Empire, was running from 3 small ships with unknown origins. "General, we should regroup and analyze their tactics," his first officer suggested. Throck wanted to refuse. But he was not a fool. These unknown warriors fought with a ferocity he had never encountered. They treated warfare like an art form. Every move unexpected, every attack precise. If he stayed, he might lose more ships. "All vessels, retreat to the jump point," Throck ordered. He would report this to the Emperor. Let the Empire decide how to handle these mysterious fighters. As the Krithian ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, the battlefield fell silent. The surviving civilian transports floated in space, damaged, but alive. Jake let out a breath he did not know he was holding. "Damage report. Damage report. Shields at 20%, Nicole reported. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Engines stable, but running hot. We are still combat capable. The Marathon reports moderate damage," Ben added. "The Ranger is okay. Minor hits only." Lisa opened a channel to the civilian ships. "This is Captain Lisa Grant of the United Nations ship Defiance. Do you require assistance?" There was a long silence. Then a voice replied, in a language the computer slowly began to translate. We do not understand. Who are you? What species are you? Why did you help us?" Lisa looked at Jake. He nodded. This was the moment. First, contact. "We are humans," Lisa said simply. "We helped you because it was the right thing to do." Another pause. Then the voice spoke again, and this time, there was wonder in it. "Humans? But that is impossible. Humans are myths, ancient stories. You disappeared 3,000 years ago." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. They knew about humanity. Somehow, across thousands of years and light years of space, the galaxy remembered them. "We did not disappear," Lisa said. "We were just lost. But we are back now." On the lead civilian transport, Commander Kessar of the Talion Collective stared at his communication screen. His hands were shaking. He had grown up hearing stories about the humans, the ancient guardians who fought to protect others. His grandmother used to tell him those tales before bed. He had thought they were fiction, but they were real. The humans were real, and they had just saved his life. "Thank you," Kessar said, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for coming back." News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within 2 days, every species in the Galactic Council had heard about what happened in the Talion system. 3 unknown ships had appeared and driven off a Krithian battle fleet. The survivors were calling them humans, a name from ancient legends. The council chamber on Viridian Prime was more crowded than it had been in years. Every representative wanted to be present for this moment. The air was filled with dozens of different languages, all being translated simultaneously. Vesh sat in his seat, watching the chaos with quiet satisfaction. He had told them. He had said the humans were real. Now, they would have to believe. Commander Zeke of the Talion Collective stood at the central platform. His people had compiled all the data from the battle. Every sensor reading, every tactical maneuver. The evidence was undeniable. The ships were smaller than Krithian cruisers, Zek explained, displaying holographic images of the battle. But they fought with strategies we have never seen. They moved aggressively, targeting specific systems rather than trying to overwhelm shields with raw firepower. They put themselves in danger to protect civilian vessels. A Korthan warrior named Drax, who had mocked Vesh's stories just days ago, leaned forward in his seat. "Show me their tactics again." Zek replayed the footage. The council watched as the human ship called Defiance charged directly at a Krithian warship, rolled at the last second, and fired at point-blank range. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "That is suicide," a Vrexian diplomat said. "One mistake, and they would have been destroyed." "But they did not make mistakes," Zek replied. "Every move was calculated. Every risk was measured. This is how they fight. This is what the old records meant when they said humans treated warfare differently than other species." Vesh finally stood, his old bones creaking. "I have been studying the archives since the battle. I found more fragments. The humans were not just warriors. They were protectors. 3,000 years ago, they had colonies throughout this region of space. The records say they helped defend smaller species against aggressors. Then, something happened. A catastrophic event. The humans vanished, and we forgot them. But they remembered us." The council chamber fell silent. The weight of what Vesh was saying settled over everyone. "They came back to help us," Zek added softly. "They did not know us. They had no reason to risk their lives. But they did. Anyway, not everyone was convinced." A Nexian counselor raised her crystalline hand. "Or, they are preparing for conquest. They saved the Talion ships to appear benevolent. Now we will welcome them." Arguments erupted across the chamber. Some saw humanity as saviors. Others saw them as a threat. The debate raged for hours, until a message arrived that changed everything. "The humans are requesting permission to address the council," an aide announced. "They have a diplomatic envoy approaching Viridian Prime." The chamber went silent again. They were coming here. The ancient warriors were coming to the council. 3 days later, a human ship entered orbit around Viridian Prime. It was different from the warships that fought at Talion. This one was sleeker, designed for speed and diplomacy rather than combat. Ambassador Ryan Foster stood in the shuttle bay, adjusting his formal uniform for the 10th time. "You look fine," Lieutenant Nicole Davis said. She had been assigned as his diplomatic attaché, mainly because she was good at reading people and situations. Ryan smiled nervously. "I am about to address a council of alien species that think we are either mythical saviors or dangerous conquerors. I do not think fine is going to cut it." The shuttle landed on Viridian Prime. Ryan and Nicole stepped out into a world unlike anything they had ever seen. The architecture was beautiful, combining styles from dozens of different cultures. The people walking through the streets were even more diverse. There were species with scales, species with fur, species that seemed to be made of living crystal, and all of them stopped to stare at the humans. Ryan heard whispers in languages he did not understand, but the translation device in his ear caught some of them. "Are those really humans? They look so ordinary. I thought they would be giants." The council chamber was even more intimidating. 40 different species sat in tiered seating, all watching as Ryan and Nicole walked to the central platform. Ryan felt his heart pounding. This was it. Humanity's chance to rejoin the galactic community, or to be rejected. Members of the Galactic Council. Ryan began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "My name is Ambassador Ryan Foster, representing the United Nations of Earth. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic relations with all species present." A Korthan warrior interrupted. "You expect us to simply accept your presence? You disappear for 3,000 years, then return in warships. What are your true intentions?" Ryan had prepared for this question. "Our intentions are simple. We seek friendship and cooperation. We were isolated by a disaster we still do not fully understand. For 3,000 years, we thought we were alone. We rebuilt our civilization from ruins. We reached for the stars again. And when we finally found other species, we found them under attack. We could not stand by and watch innocent people die. That is not who we are." "And who are you?" Vesh asked gently. "What makes humans different?" Ryan thought carefully about his answer. "We are not stronger than you. We are not smarter. We do not have special powers or advanced technology. What we have is stubbornness. We have a belief that some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. We have each other. The council members exchanged looks. Some seemed moved by Ryan's words. Others remained skeptical. But the debate was cut short by an emergency alert. Every display in the chamber lit up with the same message. A Crithian fleet had been detected, approaching the Sol system. Earth's home system. The Empire was coming for humanity. Far across the galaxy, General Throck stood before the Crithian War Council. He had been summoned to explain his defeat at Talion. Emperor Vorax, a massive figure covered in dark armor, sat on his throne and listened to Throck's report. "These humans fought like nothing I have encountered," Throck said. "They should have been easy to defeat, but they used tactics that defied logic. They risked everything to protect vessels that were not even their own." Emperor Vorax leaned forward. "You retreated from 3 small ships. I retreated to preserve my fleet and bring you intelligence, my emperor," Throck replied carefully. "The humans are dangerous, not because of their weapons, but because of their mindset. They do not think like we do." Vorax considered this. The Crithian Empire had been expanding for a century, conquering system after system. No one had been able to stop them. Could these returned humans be the threat that finally challenged his empire? "I want to test them," Vorax decided. "Send a fleet to their home system. Not to conquer, but to assess. If they are as formidable as you claim, we will see how they defend their own world. If they are weak, we will crush them before they become a problem." "And if they prove strong?" Throck asked. Vorax's eyes glinted. "Then we will learn from them before we destroy them." The Crithian fleet departed 2 days later. 40 warships, commanded by General Malak, one of the Empire's most experienced officers. Their mission was clear: test humanity's defenses and, if possible, eliminate them. On Earth, alarms were blaring. Admiral Kevin Hayes stood in the command center, watching the sensor displays with growing dread. 40 ships. The Crithians were sending 40 ships against Earth. "How many vessels can we get combat ready?" Kevin demanded. His chief of staff checked the reports. 15, Admiral. The Defiance is still 2 days away. We have the Valiant, the Constitution, and 12 smaller ships. That is all. 15 ships against 40. The numbers were terrible. Kevin felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. Every person on Earth was depending on him to protect them. Commander Jake Morris received the alert while his ship was still 3 light-years from Earth. He read the message twice, unable to believe what he was seeing. "Get us home," Jake told Ben. "Maximum speed. I do not care if it burns out the engines." Lisa appeared on his communication screen. "Jake, even if we push our ships to the breaking point, we will not make it in time." "Jake, then we'd trying," Jake said simply. Lisa nodded. She understood. Earth was home. They would fight for it, or they would die for it. There was no other option. The word was spreading across the galaxy. The Crithians were attacking Earth. The humans would face their first true test. Some species watched with hope. Others waited to see the ancient legends destroyed. But everyone was watching. This would be the battle that decided humanity's fate. The Crithian fleet emerged at the edge of the Sol system like a plague of locusts. 40 massive warships, their dark hulls absorbing the distant light of the sun. On the bridge of the flagship, General Malak studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. 15 human ships detected, his sensor officer reported. They are positioned in a defensive formation between our fleet and the third planet. That must be their homeworld. Malak smiled beneath his helmet. 15 against 40. The humans were brave. He would give them that. But bravery did not win battles. "Open a channel," Malak commanded. "Let me speak to whoever leads these fools." On the bridge of the UNS Valiant, Admiral Kevin Hayes stood straight and calm, even though his heart was racing. This ship was brand new, barely tested in combat. Around him, his crew worked their stations with focused intensity. They all knew what was at stake. Incoming transmission from the Crithian fleet, the communications officer announced. Put it through, Kevin said. The view screen showed General Malak. The Crithian was massive, easily twice the size of a human, with armor that looked like it had seen 1,000 battles. I am General Malak of the Crithian Empire, the alien said, his voice deep and confident. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender your system and your species will be allowed to live as subjects of the Empire. Refuse, and we will reduce your homeworld to ash. Kevin felt anger burning in his chest, but he kept his voice level. This is Admiral Kevin Hayes, of the United Earth Defense Force. You will not pass. Turn back, or face the consequences. Malak laughed. You have 15 ships. I have 40. What consequences could you possibly inflict? You are welcome to find out, Kevin replied, then closed the channel. Around him, the bridge crew waited for orders. Kevin looked at each of them. Young faces, brave faces. People who had families on Earth. People who were willing to die to protect them. All ships, Kevin said over the fleet channel. Battle stations. Execute Formation Omega. We are going to show them what humans are made of. The human fleet began to move, but not in the way the Crithians expected. Instead of staying in a defensive formation, the 15 ships split into 3 groups and accelerated directly toward the Crithian fleet. On the Crithian flagship, Malak watched in confusion. They are attacking? Are they insane? Sensors indicate they are charging weapons, his tactical officer reported. All ships are on intercept courses. Malak had studied the reports from Talion. He knew humans fought aggressively, but this was suicide. All ships, open fire. Destroy them. The Crithian fleet unleashed a massive barrage. Energy, weapons, and missiles filled space with deadly light. The human ships dove through the incoming fire like swimmers in a storm. Their shields flared and sparked, taking hits that should have destroyed them, but they kept coming. Captain Greg Murphy commanded the Constitution, leading the first attack group. 5 ships followed him as he drove straight toward the center of the Crithian formation. All power to forward shields, Greg ordered. Target the flagship. His weapons officer looked at him with wide eyes. Sir, if we get that close to their flagship, we will be in range of 20 Crithian ships. I know, Greg said calmly. That is the point. Fire everything we have. The Constitution and its group reached the Crithian lines. They did not try to fight all 40 ships. Instead, they focused entirely on the flagship, pouring every weapon they had into its shields. The Crithian shields were strong, designed to withstand sustained fire from multiple ships, but they were not designed for 5 ships firing at point-blank range at the same target. The flagship's shields collapsed. Human weapons tore into its hull. Explosions rippled across the massive ship. General Malak was thrown from his command chair as his ship shook. Damage report. Shields down. Hull breaches on decks 5 through 12. Engine power at 60%. Malak could not believe it. 5 small ships had crippled his flagship. How was that possible? But there was no time to analyze. The second human attack group was already hitting the Crithian left flank. The third group was moving to cut off the Crithian retreat route. Lieutenant Ben Carter flew his fighter through a cloud of debris, his hands steady on the controls despite the chaos around him. Behind him flew 11 other fighter craft, the fastest and most maneuverable ships in the human fleet. Alpha Wing, target those cruisers, Ben commanded. Hit their sensor arrays. Make them blind. The fighters scattered, too small and fast for the Crithian weapons to track. They danced through space, firing precise shots at vulnerable points. Sensor arrays exploded. Communication dishes were torn away. The Crithian ships began to lose coordination. On the Valiant, Admiral Kevin watched the tactical display. The plan was working, but barely. His ships were taking heavy damage. The Constitution had lost its shields entirely. 2 smaller ships were drifting, their engines dead. "Sir, the Crithians are trying to regroup," his tactical officer reported. Kevin nodded. He had expected this. "Deploy the mines." All of them. Hundreds of small devices launched from the human ships, spreading throughout the battlefield. They were simple weapons, barely more than explosive charges with basic sensors. But they did not need to be sophisticated. They just needed to be in the right place. When the Crithian ships tried to form up into a defensive formation, they ran straight into the minefield. Explosions blossomed across space. Several Crithian ships took critical damage. "They are panicking," the tactical officer said with surprise. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Keep the pressure on." But the smile faded as new alarms began to sound. "Sir, multiple Crithian ships are targeting Earth directly. They are going to bombard the planet." Kevin felt ice in his veins. He had known this might happen. The Crithians could not defeat the human fleet easily, so they were going to attack the thing the humans were trying to protect. "All ships, intercept course," Kevin ordered. "We have to stop them." 6 Crithian cruisers broke away from the main battle, heading toward Earth. The human ships gave chase, but they were too far away. The Crithians would reach firing range in minutes. On Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky. They could not see the battle happening in space, but they knew it was there. They knew people were fighting and dying to protect them. Sergeant Amy Collins was not in space. She was on the ground at a military base in Colorado, watching the situation on monitors with growing horror. She commanded a Marine battalion, soldiers trained for ground combat. They could do nothing to help in a space battle. "We should be up there," one of her soldiers said. Amy understood the frustration. She felt it too. But all they could do was wait and hope. Then, something appeared on the monitors that made everyone in the command center freeze. New ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel. But they were not Crithian. The Defiance, Marathon, and Ranger had arrived. They were still 2 days away, but Jake Morris had pushed the engines beyond their limits. The ships were damaged from the strain, but they had made it. And they were not alone. Behind the 3 human ships came vessels of a dozen different designs. Talion cruisers, Auxilian frigates, ships from 6 other species, all members of the Galactic Council. On the Defiance Bridge, Jake Morris stared at the Council fleet with shock. Where did they come from? Commander Kesser's face appeared on the communication screen. The Talion officer smiled. "We heard Earth was in danger. We remembered what you did for us at Talion. We could not let you face this alone." Over the Talion officer. "We heard now the Talion. We heard Earth was in danger. 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 We heard Earth." Beside Kessar's image, Vesh appeared. The old Arxilian scholar looked tired but determined. The council voted. Not all species agreed, but enough did. "We are here to stand with humanity. The ancient guardians protected us once. Now we protect them." Jake felt emotion welling up in his throat. He had to clear it before he could speak. "Thank you. We will not forget this. 4DA. We will not forget this." The combined fleet hit the Crithian forces like a hammer. The 6 cruisers heading for Earth were intercepted and destroyed. The main Crithian fleet, already battered by the human defense, found themselves surrounded. General Malak watched his tactical display with growing despair. He had 40 ships. He had numerical superiority. But numbers meant nothing against enemies who fought like this. The humans were relentless. The council species, emboldened by the humans' example, fought with courage they had not shown before. "General, we have lost 23 ships," his tactical officer reported. "We must retreat." Malak wanted to refuse. To retreat would mean admitting defeat. It would mean the Crithian Empire had been beaten by a species that had been gone for 3,000 years. But he was a soldier before he was a servant of pride. All ships, retreat to the jump point. Emergency jump. As soon as we are clear. The surviving Crithian vessels fled, limping away from the battle. Several were pursued by council ships, but Jake called them back. Let them go, Jake said over the fleet channel. We have won. They know it. The galaxy knows it. As the last Crithian ship vanished into faster-than-light travel, the defenders of Earth began to cheer. On the Valiant, Admiral Kevin let himself finally breathe. On Earth, billions of people celebrated. Far away on Viridion Prime, the Galactic Council watched the reports in silence. The humans had fought against impossible odds. They had held the line. And when help came, they had won. Vesh sat in his seat with tears running down his face. The ancient legends were true. All of them. The humans were back. The Guardians had returned. The weeks following the Battle of Sol changed everything. Across the galaxy, species that had never worked together began forming alliances. Ships that had only defended their own systems started coordinating patrols. And at the center of it all were the humans, the ancient species that refused to give up. On Viridion Prime, the Galactic Council held a special session. Every seat was filled. Representatives from 40 species had come to witness this moment. The council chamber had been decorated for a ceremony, something that had not happened in decades. Ambassador Ryan Foster stood in the waiting area outside the chamber, adjusting his formal uniform. Lieutenant Nicole Davis stood beside him, calm and professional as always. You ready for this? Nicole asked. Ryan laughed nervously. No. But when has that ever stopped us? The doors opened. Ryan and Nicole walked into the chamber, followed by Captain Lisa Grant, Commander Jake Morris, and Admiral Kevin Hayes. The representatives stood as the humans entered, a sign of respect that made Ryan's throat tight with emotion. Vesh, the old Arxilian scholar, stood at the central platform. His voice was stronger than Ryan had ever heard it. 3,000 years ago, humanity was part of this council, Vesh said. They were our allies, our protectors. They helped defend species that could not defend themselves. Then they vanished, and we thought they were gone forever. We made them into legends, stories we told our children. But legends do not bleed. Legends do not sacrifice. Legends do not come back. Vesh turned to face the humans. But you did come back. You came back and you fought for people you did not know. You risked everything to protect the innocent. You proved that the stories were not just stories, they were history. And now we ask you to take your place among us once more. Commander Zek of the Talion Collective stepped forward, carrying a small box. Inside was an object Ryan had only seen in old photographs from Earth museums. It was a medallion, ancient and worn, marked with symbols from dozens of different languages. This belonged to the last human ambassador to the council, Zek said. We kept it in our archives, hoping that one day we could return it to its rightful owners. Today is that day. Zek placed the medallion around Lisa's neck. The captain stood straight, tears in her eyes but pride in her face. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity as an equal member, Vesh announced. And we offer you the title you once held, Guardians of the Galactic Frontier. Will you accept? Ryan looked at his companions. Lisa nodded. Jake smiled. Kevin gave a small gesture of approval. Ryan turned back to the council. We accept, Ryan said. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as partners, as friends. We will stand with you against the darkness. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. The council chamber erupted in approval. Representatives from dozens of species applauded. Some made sounds of celebration that the translation devices could not quite capture, but the meaning was clear. Humanity was home, but being guardians meant more than ceremonies and titles. It meant work. In the months that followed, Human military advisors spread throughout the council fleets. They taught the tactics that had proven so effective against the Crithians. But more importantly, they taught a different mindset. Lieutenant Nicole Davis found herself assigned to a joint training facility on a moon orbiting Viridian Prime. She stood in front of a classroom filled with officers from a dozen different species, all watching her with curious eyes. The most important thing to understand about human tactics, Nicole said, is that they are not about being stronger or having better weapons. They are about being unpredictable. They are about adapting faster than your enemy. Most importantly, they are about being willing to take risks. A Corthan officer raised his hand. But risk means casualties. How do you justify sending your people into danger? Nicole thought carefully about her answer. We do not send our people into danger carelessly. Every risk is calculated. But we also understand that sometimes the only way to protect the many is to risk the few. That is what soldiers do. That is what guardians do. The training continued for months. Slowly, the council fleets began to change. They became more aggressive, more flexible. They learned to fight as humans fought, not by following rigid plans but by responding to the moment. Commander Jake Morris, promoted to admiral after the Battle of Sol, took command of a joint fleet. His second in command was Kessar, the Talion officer whose life had been saved in that first battle. Together, they planned something that had never been attempted before. We are going to liberate Keswick Prime, Jake announced at a strategy meeting. The room went silent. Keswick Prime was a strategically vital world that the Crithians had occupied for 15 years. It controlled a major trade route and had been turned into a fortress. Attacking it would be incredibly dangerous. The Crithians have 30 ships defending that system, a Vrexian tactical officer pointed out. Plus, ground forces and orbital defenses. I know, Jake said. That is why we are not going to do this the way they expect. The plan was complex. A feint attack on one side of the system to draw the Crithian fleet away. Then, a fast strike on the other side to drop ground forces directly onto the capital city. Finally, the main fleet would hit the Crithian ships while they were out of position. It was risky. It required perfect timing. It was exactly the kind of plan humans were known for. Sergeant Amy Collins finally got her chance to fight. She led a battalion of human marines alongside Arxilian commandos and Talion irregulars. Their mission was to secure the planetary government building in Keswick Prime's capital city and free the civilian leaders who had been imprisoned there. The dropships descended through heavy anti-aircraft fire. Amy gripped her rifle and tried to ignore the explosions rocking the ship. Around her, Marines from 3 different species checked their weapons and said quiet prayers in their own languages. The ship crashed rather than landed, slamming into the ground hard enough to break Amy's arm. She barely felt it. Training and adrenaline took over. She kicked open the hatch and led her team out into a war zone. The capital city was a nightmare of urban combat. Crithian soldiers held fortified positions in every building. The fighting was brutal and close. Amy's team moved through the streets, clearing buildings one by one. She fought alongside an Arxilian commando named Thex, who saved her life twice in the first hour. "You humans fight like you are crazy," Thex said, pulling Amy behind cover as enemy fire tore through the wall where she had been standing. "We fight like we care," Amy replied, reloading her rifle. There is a difference. The battle for the city lasted 3 days. The joint ground forces fought block by block, street by street. The Crithian defenders were well-trained and determined. But they had never faced an enemy like this. The humans refused to stop. When they were exhausted, they kept going. When they were wounded, they kept fighting. And their example inspired the council species to do the same. Above the planet, the space battle was equally fierce. Admiral Jake Morris commanded his fleet with the precision of a surgeon and the aggression of a warrior. The Crithians tried to respond, but Jake always seemed to be one step ahead. When the Crithian commander, General Krath, finally realized he was beaten, he sent a message requesting terms of surrender. Jake met with General Krath aboard a neutral station. The Krithian general was massive and scarred, a veteran of 100 battles. He looked at Jake with something close to respect. "I have fought many enemies," Krath said, "but never anyone like you. You fight as if defeat is not possible." Jake shook his head. "Defeat is always possible. We just choose not to accept it." The surrender was honorable. The Krithian troops were allowed to leave with their personal weapons as a sign of respect. The occupation ended. Keswick Prime was free. When Amy and her Marines finally boarded their transport ships to leave the planet, the civilian population lined the streets to watch them go. They threw flowers and waved flags. Children held up signs in languages Amy could not read, but she understood the message anyway. "Thank you." Back on Viridian Prime, the council held another ceremony. This one was different from the first. This one was not about welcoming humanity back. It was about celebrating what they had accomplished together. Captain Lisa Grant stood with Commander Kessar, Admiral Kevin Hayes, and dozens of other officers from a dozen species. They had fought together, bled together, won together. Vesh approached Lisa with tears in his eyes. "This is yours now," Vesh said. "Not just as a symbol, but as a truth. You are the Guardians. You have earned it with blood and courage." Lisa took the medallion and looked at it carefully. She could see the wear on it, the signs of age. She wondered about the human who had worn it 3,000 years ago. What had they fought for? What had they believed in? She realized the answer was simple. The same things humanity still fought for: protection of the innocent, defense of freedom, standing up against tyranny. Some things never changed. Across the galaxy, in the dark throne room of the Krithian Empire, Emperor Vorax stared at the reports from Keswick Prime. His generals stood silently, waiting for his rage. But Vorax was not angry. He was thoughtful. "The humans are everything the legends said they were," Vorax said quietly. "They do not fight to conquer. They fight to protect. That makes them more dangerous than any empire." "What are your orders, Emperor?" General Throck asked. Vorax was silent for a long moment. The Krithian Empire had been expanding for a century. No one had been able to stop them. But these humans were different. They had shown that the Empire could be beaten. And worse, they had inspired others to believe it too. "We will not attack human systems again," Vorax finally said. "Not now. We will watch them, study them, and when we understand how they think, then we will act. But carefully. Very carefully." The Krithian expansion had stopped. For the first time in a century, the galaxy had hope. Jake stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the stars. Beside him stood Kessar, his Talion friend and second in command. "What are you thinking?" Kessar asked. Jake smiled. "I am thinking about how lonely we felt 3,000 years ago. We thought we were the only ones. But we were never alone. You were here, waiting for us to come home. And now that you are home?" Kessar asked. Jake's smile widened. "Now we make sure that no one ever feels that alone again. We protect the weak. We defend the innocent. We stand against the darkness. That is what Guardians do." Far below them, on 1,000 different worlds, people of 100 different species looked up at the stars. They knew that somewhere up there, the Guardians were watching. Humans and their allies, working together to keep the galaxy safe. The ancient legends had returned. And the galaxy would never be the same.